The mud from my son's grave was still on my shoes when she said it. Your stuff's in trash bags outside. My life, tossed onto the driveway. I am 63 years old. They thought I was weak, confused, finished. They forgot I worked in a nursing home for 30 years. I know every trick they use to discard the old, and I will use every single one of them to tear their world apart. My name is Eleanor Brooke. I am 63 years old, a widow living in Maple Heights, a suburb that used to feel safe, a place where people once knew their neighbors. Today, just hours ago, I buried my only son, Daniel. They called his car crash sudden, a sterile, clinical word for the violent rip that tore the very center of my life out. We live in a world of quiet, middle-class desperation here. We have houses with mortgages that never seem to end. We dread the mailman for the medical bills that pile up like junk, and we watch the news talk about inflation, a word that just means the fear of getting old, of becoming a financial burden, grows a little colder in your stomach every single day. The car ride home from the cemetery was silent. The house was even quieter. Someone had left a large funeral wreath propped on the porch chair, a gaudy splash of white ribbons already wilting in the flat. Unforgiving grey sky. The exhaustion that settled in my bones felt heavier than the grief itself. I didn't want to cry anymore. I just wanted to lie down in my own bed. In the room I had shared with my late husband, Frank, for 40 years. Vanessa was in the entryway, bathed in the blue light of her phone. She didn't look up when I came in, the damp chill of the graveyard clinging to my black coat. No hug. No. How are you holding up? Mom. Just the rapid, sharp click, click, click of her perfectly manicured nails on the glass screen. I stood there, waiting for just a flicker of humanity. Finally, she sighed, as if I were an interruption in her day. Did you sign the insurance papers? She asked. Not, are you okay? Not, can I get you something? Just the papers. I didn't answer. I felt too numb. I pushed past her, my legs aching, walking down the familiar hallway toward my bedroom. But I stopped at the doorway. The room was empty. My bed. Gone. The heavy cherrywood dresser Frank had bought me for our 10th anniversary. Gone. The walls were stark, naked, showing pale rectangles where our pictures had hung for decades. I turned slowly, a sick, dizzy feeling rising in my throat. I looked out the front window, past the wilting wreath, to the driveway, and there it was. My life, piled on the asphalt next to the bright blue recycling bin. Black, glistening trash bags, dozens of them, bulging with my existence. I could see the gold-tooled corner of a photo album sticking out of one that had torn. My clothes, my books, the Afghan I knitted when Dan was born, even Frank's old Navy uniform in its preservation box. All of it. Just trash. Vanessa had followed me. She was chewing gum now. A lazy, rhythmic crackle. Your stuff's in trash bags outside, she said, her voice as flat and grey as the sky. I figured you wouldn't need all that anymore. The words didn't compute. What? My voice was a dry whisper. Why Dan? Dan's only just... You could have waited. You could have asked me. Vanessa rolled her eyes, a performance of pure annoyance. We need the space. Eleanor. It's just old things. Clutter. She stepped closer, and her voice dropped into a tone of false, sugary concern. Besides, we'll be moving you to a place much more suitable for your age very soon. You won't have room for all this junk there." A cold draught seemed to blow right through the empty room. I glanced across the street. Mrs. Petrov, my neighbour for 20 years, was watching from behind her sheer curtains. Her hand was at her mouth. She just stared, her face a mask of pity. And then, as I watched, she let the curtain fall. No one was coming. In this modern, polite world, no one ever intervenes. That night, they put me in the den, my son's old sofa bed, the one he used for sleepovers. It smelled like stale beer and old pizza. I was a refugee in my own home, in a room now designated Mum's temporary room. I lay there, shaking, not from cold, but from a humiliation so deep it felt like it was dissolving my bones. I stared at the sliver of light under the door, and then I heard them. Vanessa and her mother, Lorraine, whispering in the kitchen. Their voices were low, conspiratorial, but the words were sharp, cutting through the silence. House papers? Power of attorney? He was so stupid not to sign it over before. And then, the one that stopped my breath. Dan's life insurance. It's the full payout, double indemnity. A seed, cold and hard and sharp, planted itself right in the center of my grief. This wasn't just a sudden accident. This wasn't just a grieving widow cleaning house. This was a plan. Lying on that lumpy sofa bed in the den, with the kitchen whispers finally gone silent, my past came flooding back. It was a defense mechanism, I suppose. A way to escape the cold reality of the trash bags on my driveway. For 30 years. I was a registered nurse at Silverthorne Haven. I had seen it all. I had held the hands of wealthy men reduced to numbers, their children visiting once a month, then once a year, then not at all. I had watched families argue over who would take the burden until a court-appointed guardian took everything. I had promised my Daniel, vowed to him, that I would never, ever be that for him. I had my own savings, my own house, my own dignity. I would never be a weight on my son, my Dan. He was always such a good boy, all skinny arms, knobby knees, and glasses too big for his face. He grew up into a quiet, brilliant man, a software engineer at a big tech firm downtown called Northbridge Nexus Labs. He was gentle, not like his father. He was the kind of man who would wrap his arms around me from behind while I was washing dishes and rest his chin on my head. "I'll always have a room for you, Mom," he used to joke. "A really nice one, with a view of the garden you'll plant for me." The memory brought a sharp, physical pain, a stone in my chest. And then Vanessa entered his life. She was like a bright, hard-edged jewel, a high-end real estate agent from Skyline Crest Realty. She was stunningly beautiful, impeccably dressed, and possessed a social radar that was almost terrifying. She always knew the exact right thing to say, the perfect compliment, the most reassuring word. Dan was mesmerized. I was cautious. I tried to ignore the little red flags, the tiny, discordant notes in her perfect melody. She had a way of joking about old people's money that made my skin crawl. She would ask breezy, casual questions about my savings, my pension, whether Frank's life insurance had been invested properly. More than once, she'd suggested I sell my big empty house and really enjoy retirement in Florida. I hate the heat. I hate the humidity. I told her as much, but she just laughed, a tinkling sound, and said, "Oh, Eleanor, you just haven't seen the right parts of it." Their wedding was a spectacle. It was far beyond anything Daniel could afford. a grand affair at a country club with fountains and ice sculptures. Vanessa just waved a dismissive, elegant hand and said she handled it, that her connections in the property world got them an amazing deal. But watching them, it felt less like a marriage and more like a real estate closing. It was all about the image, the photographs, the presentation. After that, things changed. My visits, which had been weekly, started to feel intrusive. Vanessa was never rude, not directly, but she would sigh heavily when I stayed for dinner too long. I overheard her once, telling Dan in a low, frustrated voice that he needed to set boundaries with me, that it was unhealthy for a grown man to be so attached. So I did what mothers do. I retreated. I did not want to be the source of their first fight, or their 50th. I went from being the center of Dan's life to an occasional guest, calling first, never staying too long, always bringing a gift as a token of entry. The cold from the den floor seeped into my hip. I shivered, pulling the thin Afghan tighter. My mind raced, faster now, connecting things I had refused to see. Those last few weeks, Dan had been off. He called me 3 times in 1 week, which was unusual. He sounded strained, preoccupied. He mentioned something not clean at the company, some kind of internal project that felt wrong to him. He was vague, but he was agitated. "Just let me get through this. Mum," he'd said on our last call. "When this is over, I'm taking you to the coast. A long weekend, maybe a whole week. Just us. We'll celebrate. Celebrate what I never got to ask." Then, the night before the accident, my phone had buzzed on the nightstand, just after 11 p.m., a text from Dan. I fumbled for my glasses. The message was just a fragment. "Mum, if anything happens," and that was it. Nothing followed. I texted back, "Dan, is everything okay?" No reply. I called. It went straight to voicemail. I told myself he'd fallen asleep, that his phone had died mid-text. The next morning, at 8:03 a.m., the state police called. I lay there in the dark den, the pieces clicking into place with a horrifying, sickening precision. The whispers about double indemnity, the empty bedroom, the trash bags, the rush to get me to sign insurance papers. My son's death was not an accident. It was the first step in a plan. And I, the grieving, confused, 63-year-old widow, was the second. Vanessa was not just cleaning house. She was clearing a board, removing the last obstacle. The next morning, I was outside on the driveway at dawn. The air was cold, but the humiliation was colder. I couldn't let them just throw my life into a landfill. With my back aching, I began to tear open the black plastic bags, one by one. I was pulling out a framed photo of Dan, maybe 5 years old, his 2 front teeth missing, when the old landline phone inside the house started to ring. It was a sharp, demanding sound in the silent house. I hadn't heard that phone ring in months. Dan and I always used our cells. I hurried inside, my hands grimy from the driveway. The caller ID display was just 2 words, "Blocked caller." I hesitated, then picked up the receiver. "Hello." A man's voice, low and serious. "Mrs. Eleanor Brooke." "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Miles Carter, Mrs. Brooke. I'm the head of internal security at Northbridge Nexus Labs, where your son worked. First, please accept my deepest condolences for your loss. Daniel was... he was a good man." "Thank you." I whispered, clutching the receiver. I need to meet with you, he said, his voice dropping even lower. It's about some things Daniel left behind, things he was working on just before the accident. A new kind of chill, sharper than the morning air, went down my spine. There's one more thing. Mrs. Brooke, he continued. It is imperative that you do not mention this call, or our meeting, to anyone, especially not to your daughter-in-law, Vanessa. My breath caught. Why? What is this about? There was a pause. I can't discuss it over the phone, but the information Daniel was handling involves potential financial fraud, serious insurance irregularities, and Mrs. Brooke. It may be connected to the circumstances of his death. My knuckles were white on the phone. For 30 years at Silverthorne Haven, I had listened to hundreds of stories about telephone scams targeting the elderly, the friendly banker, the long-lost relative, the government agent. They all started with urgency and secrecy. But this felt different. This man knew Dan's name. He knew where he worked. And he had just confirmed the dark seed of suspicion that had been growing in me all night. My intuition, the one I had relied on for 3 decades to spot elder abuse when families tried to hide it, was screaming. I made a choice. I would not be a confused patient. I would be a nurse. I would be an investigator. When and where? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. After we arranged it, I hung up and immediately went to find Vanessa. She was in the kitchen, already dressed in expensive-looking athletic wear, tapping at her laptop. I put my hand to my forehead, feigning a small stumble. "Oh, dear," I said, my voice shaky. "I think I just got dizzy. All this? It's too much." Vanessa looked up, her expression a perfect mask of annoyance barely concealed by pity. "See, Mum, this is what I'm talking about. You can't even stand up straight." I want to help," I stammered, looking toward the door. "All my things? I should at least sort through them. See what can be saved?" "Fine," she snapped. "But don't overdo it. You look terrible." She went back to her laptop. Under the guise of sorting, I spent the next hour carefully, painfully, going through the bags. I rescued Dan's baby pictures, Frank's military service medals, and a small box of my old bank statements and tax returns. I hid them in the bottom of my large, old-fashioned handbag, the one she probably thought was full of tissues and hard candy. Later that afternoon, as I was resting on the sofa bed, Vanessa came in. She sat on the edge of the coffee table, her voice dripping with fake empathy. "Mum, I've been thinking," she said. "This house is too much for you. And honestly, I'm worried about you being alone. You're forgetting things. You're dizzy." I just looked at her, my face a blank mask of frail confusion. "I found a wonderful place. It's called Green Meadows Assisted Living. It's safe. It has doctors on site, people to help you with. Well, with everything. We can go visit tomorrow, just to see." This was it. The next step in the playbook. I had seen families do this at Silverthorne 100 times. That sounds nice, dear," I murmured. "If you think it's best." "I do," she said, patting my hand. "It's just so much easier to handle all the paperwork, the property, if we know you're settled. It's best if I'm the name on the accounts, just to, take the burden off you." As she spoke, I carefully slid my thumb across the side of my old smartphone in my pocket, pressing the record button on the simple voice memo app I'd had for years. It was the first small seed for my own harvest. The next morning, I played my card. "Vanessa," I said, looking as pathetic as I could. "I need to go to my bank. Just the little branch down on Main. With the funeral, I just need to check on my Social Security deposit." She was clearly annoyed, already on the phone with someone she kept calling counselor. "Ugh, fine. Eleanor, are you sure you can handle it? My God. Just be back by noon. I'm dealing with Dan's will, and it's a complete mess." She thought I was checking on a few $100. She thought I was a doddering old fool. She let me go. I walked to the corner bus stop, out of sight of the house. I didn't go to the local bank. I took the number 14 bus downtown, all the way to the glass and steel canyons of Roseport. I walked into the lobby of Northbridge Nexus Labs, a place so cold and modern it felt like an aquarium. My sensible rubber-soled shoes squeaked on the polished marble floor, and the young security guard looked at me like I was a lost grandmother. "I'm here to see Miles Carter," I said, my voice clear and firm. 5 minutes later, I was sitting in a small, windowless conference room, the door clicking shut with the heavy, solid sound of a vault. Miles Carter was younger than I expected, with a kind, tired face. He looked like a man who carried secrets for a living. "Mrs. Brooke," he said, sliding a thick file folder across the table. "Thank you for coming. What Daniel found? I think you need to see this." Miles Carter did not waste time on small talk. He opened the file, and the sterile light of the conference room seemed to grow colder. "Mrs. Brooke, Daniel came to me 2 weeks before his death," he began, his voice flat, professional. He was using his access as an engineer to trace some unusual data transfers. He found they were linked to a series of financial transactions our company had flagged. They all led outside the company, to 2 entities, a V, Brooke Holdings, LLC, and something called the Maple Heights Senior Property Fund. My blood ran cold. V. Brooke. Vanessa Brooke. Daniel compiled a report. Miles continued, pushing a thin stack of papers toward me. He was afraid. He said someone was using our company's data servers to identify and profile targets. These entities, they were buying homes from elderly residents in your area, far below market value. The sellers were then placed in private assisted living facilities. He paused, looking me straight in the eye. After the sale, the properties were immediately remortgaged at their full, inflated value, netting the LLCs a massive profit. They were leveraging the helplessness of these people. He pointed to a specific page. "This is what Daniel brought to me the day before he died. He'd found a new list. A potential list. He was destroyed. Mrs. Brooke. He found your name on it." I stared at the printout. There it was. Eleanor Brooke. And next to it, a typed-in note. A clinical assessment of my vulnerability, single widowed. House fully paid off. Emotionally dependent. Emotionally dependent. They hadn't just seen me as a target. They had defined me by my love for my son. The shock was so profound, it burned away the grief, leaving a layer of pure, frozen rage. I felt a shudder run through me, not of fear, but of an awful, clarifying anger. "There's more," Miles said grimly. He turned a laptop on the table toward me. "This is from our parking garage security feed. 3 days before the accident." The video was silent, grainy, time-stamped in the corner. I saw Dan's car, saw him get out, and then Vanessa got out of the passenger side. They were fighting. It was a vicious, terrible fight. Dan was waving a sheaf of papers in his hand, the same report I was holding. He was yelling, his face red. He threw the papers at her. Miles had activated the audio enhancement, and even through the tinny speakers, I heard my son's voice roar with fury. "I will not let you do this to my mother," he shouted. "I won't let you." I closed my eyes for a second, the image burning itself into my memory. Miles closed the laptop. The report Daniel filed also noted that the garage his car was serviced at, just 2 days before the crash, was one your daughter-in-law uses for all her high-end real estate fleet cars. We can't prove anything. The police report said brake failure, but our internal review suggests the diagnostic sensors on the brake line were tampered with. It's not enough to charge anyone with murder, Mrs. Brooke, but it's far too suspicious to be random chance. He then slid a small silver USB drive across the table. "These are copies of all the emails Daniel sent to my department, and the full file he compiled." He hesitated, then pulled a folded piece of paper from his own wallet. He also gave me this, a separate, encrypted note. He just said if anything happened, and you came looking, I was to give it to you. My hands were shaking as I unfolded it. It was Dan's handwriting, messy but clear. "If Mom is here, trust her." It read. "She's much stronger than she looks." A sob, dry and painful, escaped me. He had known. He had known I was in danger, and he had been trying to protect me, and he had been right about me. That simple note was both a final gift and a command. "You need to be extremely careful," Miles warned, his voice soft now. "If Vanessa finds out you've seen this, that you know any of it, she's not just greedy, Mrs. Brooke. She is coldly decisive. She's already proven that." He was right, but he didn't understand. The woman who had walked into this building was a grieving mother. The woman who was about to walk out was not. The pain was still there, a hot core in my chest, but it was now surrounded by something new, a cold, focused, methodical purpose. I would not just be protecting myself. I would be getting justice for Dan. I put the USB drive into my coat pocket. "Mr. Carter," I said, my voice hoarse but firm. "Can I get a paper copy of that file on my name and the printouts of those emails?" "Of course," he said, gathering them. As I tucked the papers deep into the lining of my handbag, I turned at the door. "Just one more question, Mr. Carter. A hypothetical, from my time at the nursing home. If an elderly person was convinced to sign away their property, say, while they were on medication or in a state of emotional distress, what usually happens under United States law when that's discovered?" Miles Carter looked at me, a long, appraising look. The pity was gone. It was replaced by something else. Respect. "Mrs. Brooke," he said. "It's called elder exploitation and financial abuse. And if proven, they don't just lose the house, they lose everything." When I got back to the house, the den felt even more like a cell. Vanessa was in the kitchen, and she greeted me with a bright, false smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. On the counter sat a small white paper bag from a pharmacy. "Good news, Mom," she said, pulling out a plastic bottle. When I called Green Meadows to arrange our tour, I spoke with their staff doctor. I described your little spells, and he prescribed something for your sleep, just to help quiet your mind. She rattled the bottle. I took it, my hand obediently trembling. The label was simple. I didn't recognize the doctor's name, but I recognized the drug. Back at Silverthorne, we had a name for this particular low-dose sedative. We called it the chemical restraint. Give it to a senior for 2 weeks, and they'd become confused, groggy, and disoriented. Give it to them for a month, and you had a perfect candidate for a dementia diagnosis. That night, I palmed the pill. I held it in my fist while I got my glass of water, and when Vanessa's back was turned, I dropped it into the sink and ran the tap until it dissolved. My performance had to begin. The next morning, I forgot where the coffee mugs were. "Oh, dear me," I murmured, opening the pantry. I'm all turned around. They're in the same place they've been for 20 years. "Eleanor," Vanessa snapped. "Oh, of course. Silly me. I misplaced my keys. I asked what day it was. Twice. I forgot that Dan was gone, just for a moment, and asked Vanessa what time he'd be home for dinner. The look of satisfaction on her face was almost pornographic. She was winning. She was building her case, and I was handing her the bricks. But every night, after she and Lorraine thought I was asleep, I took out a tiny spiral notebook I had hidden in a slit I'd made in the armchair's lining. I wrote down the date. I wrote down the time. I wrote down every word she said. 6 p.m. Vul offered pill. 7:30 p.m. Vi mentioned I seemed foggy. 9 p.m. Vi told Lorraine on the phone. She's deteriorating faster than I thought. I overheard them a few days later, whispering in the kitchen again. This time, it was Lorraine, her voice a low, gravelly rasp. "The tour is fine, Vanessa, but it's not binding. You need the psychiatric evaluation. I know a neurologist, Dr. Haynes. He'll do the paperwork." Vanessa's voice was sharp. "Will he find what we need?" "He'll find what he's paid to find." Lorraine replied, "If we get paper that she's incompetent, the transfer of the house and the sale are so much easier. It's clean?" I had to accelerate. The following day, I approached Vanessa with my most helpless expression. "Dear," I said, "I know I've been such a bother, but all these papers, my taxes, the house bills, I just don't understand them anymore. Could you help me just organize them, so I know what's what?" "Mom, I've told you. I'll handle that," she said, exasperated. "I know, dear, but I want to see them. It would make me feel better. We could just sit at the dining room table, just for a little while." The dining room table, the one spot in the house that was in the perfect, wide-angle view of Dan's smart doorbell camera, the one that faced the front door from the inside. She sighed, annoyed by the request, but eager to get her hands on everything. She retrieved the files from Dan's office, files I had never been allowed to see. The house deed, my tax returns, the mortgage payoff statement from 10 years ago. She spread them out on the table, her long fingers tapping on each one, explaining, but really, just inventorying her prize. The doorbell camera's tiny blue light was on. It was recording everything. A few days later, while she was helping me sort through another box of clutter, I started the fight. I picked up a small, worthless porcelain bird. "Dan gave this to me," I whimpered, clutching it. "It's junk. Eleanor, put it in the donation pile." "No, you can't. This is my house. These are my things." Vanessa finally snapped. The mask of the caring daughter-in-law dropped, revealing the predator beneath. "Listen to me, you old woman," she hissed, grabbing the bird from my hand. "This is not your house. Not anymore. This house will be mine on paper by the end of the month. You are just staying here on my goodwill until I can get you placed. Do you understand me? You can't. I can, and I will." I let the tears come, but inside, I was cheering. The doorbell camera, just 10 feet away, had captured it all. The audio, the video, the malice. That afternoon, I locked myself in the bathroom and made a call. I used a number from an old Know Your Rights brochure I'd saved from the Silverthorne Haven staff room. "Jenkins and Associates?" A crisp voice answered. "Yes," I whispered, my voice trembling for real this time. "My name is Eleanor Brooke. I need to ask a question. What can a person do, hypothetically, if their daughter-in-law is trying to force them into a nursing home to sell their house?" Outwardly, I became the perfect patient. I sat on the sofa, sipping the weak tea Vanessa made me. I nodded when she talked about the new chapter at Green Meadows. I let her pat my hand and tell me it was all for the best. I was a frail, confused, broken old woman. But in my mind, I was a general, marshalling my evidence. The pills I'd saved instead of flushed, the notebook full of quotes, the audio recordings, and now, the video. The plan was no longer just about survival. It was about justice. It was about Dan. I needed more than my own senses. I needed a tactical team. My first recruit was sitting 2 doors down. Mason, my neighbor, was a 19-year-old kid with kind eyes and a brilliant understanding of computers. He was a student at the local community college, studying IT, and had helped me reset my Wi-Fi password last winter, refusing to take the $20 I offered. I caught him by his mailbox, pretending to be confused about my own. "Mason, dear?" I said, playing the part of the slightly dotty, grieving neighbor. Since Daniel passed, I just feel so vulnerable. My doorbell camera keeps acting strangely. He came over that afternoon, while Vanessa was out at a showing. He was gentle and patient. "The memory card is almost full, Mrs. Brooke," he said. I feigned surprise. He installed a new, massive capacity card, ensuring it would record and save everything. Then, I pointed to an outlet in the dining room, the one with a perfect view of the head of the table. "And I bought this new phone charger," I said, holding up a small black cube I'd ordered online. "But I can't seem to get the little blue light to come on." He plugged it in. "It seems to be working. Mrs. Brooke. See. Oh, thank goodness." I sighed. "Let's just leave it there. It's such a good, central spot for my phone." Mason, my new digital eyes, had just unknowingly aimed a high-definition video camera directly at the stage Vanessa was setting. My next stop was my general. I took the bus 2 towns over to a small, discreet law office. I met with Ms. Jenkins, the lawyer I'd spoken to on the hotline. This time, I didn't hold back. I laid out the entire story, the trash bags, the suspicious accident, the V. Brooke Holdings, LLC, the chemical restraint pills I was pretending to take, and the plan to put me in Green Meadows. I placed the USB drive from Miles Carter on her desk. "This," I said, my voice cold, "is what my son died trying to stop." Jenkins was a woman in her 50s, with hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She listened without interruption. When I finished, she didn't offer a word of sympathy. She offered a strategy. She wants you to sign a power of attorney. Jenkins asked, a thin, dangerous smile touching her lips. Good. We will let her. You will agree to sign, but you will sign the document I draft. The plan was a legal Trojan horse. Jenkins would draft a comprehensive financial power of attorney, one that looked perfectly normal to a layman, but she would embed a specific clause. This instrument shall be rendered immediately and irrevocably null and void upon any independent finding of duress, undue influence, or actions not in the principal's best financial interest. Vanessa is arrogant, Jenkins said, tapping the USB drive. She's not a lawyer. She won't read the fine print. She'll just see your signature. Parallel to this, Jenkins made a call. I'm retaining a private investigator. Harvey. He's the best at tracking elder fraud. We're going to find every other victim of the Maple Heights Senior Property Fund. Your case is a dagger. Eleanor. Harvey is going to find the other 9. My new network was growing. I met Miles Carter again, this time at a crowded diner halfway between our homes. The smell of stale coffee and bacon grease was thick in the air. I told him about Jenkins and Harvey. Good, Miles said. If Harvey finds this crosses state lines, and these private facilities often do, for Medicaid reasons, this isn't just local fraud. This is federal. This is aggravated elder exploitation. We can bring in the feds. One more piece of tech. Mason came back to check the Wi-Fi signal. I whispered that I was worried about Vanessa yelling at me, that I wanted to remember what she said. He showed me a simple app on my phone, a triple tap on the dark screen, and it would begin recording audio. Another triple tap, and it would stop. I started leaving my phone on the kitchen counter, the nerve center of all their financial plotting. With my traps set, I began to rehearse. I was playing the most important role of my life. I sat at the dining room table, in full view of the new charger, and I would practice. I'd pick up a pen to sign a grocery list and let it clatter to the floor from my shaky hand. I'd squint at the mail, complaining that my eyes were too blurry to read the words. Vanessa watched this, her impatience growing. For God's sake, Mum, just sign it. She'd snap, pointing to a form. She was, unwittingly, coaching me for the final performance. The last piece of confirmation came from Silverthorne Haven. I visited on a Tuesday, bringing cookies. I sat with my old nurse's aide friends. I mentioned, "Oh, I heard of a place, Maple Heights Senior Fund or something." Brenda, who had worked nights with me for 15 years, lowered her voice. "It's funny you say that. Eleanor," she said. "We've had 3 new residents in the last 6 months from Maple Heights. All of them. A real sudden decline. The kids sold their houses fast. We never see the families. It's a real shame." I matched the names she mentioned to the files Harvey had started. They were a perfect match. This wasn't just Vanessa and her mother. This was a system. They were professionals. But so was I. The air in the house turned toxic. So thick with secrets and deceit, I felt I was breathing in poison. I was a prisoner, playing the role of the frail old woman, and every day was a performance on a taut, vibrating wire. The next update came from Jenkins, summarizing Harvey's report. It was worse than I ever imagined. Harvey, the investigator, had confirmed that at least 3 other houses in Maple Heights had been processed by V. Brook Holdings, LLC. The pattern was identical. The elderly, Recently widowed owners were moved. The houses were sold to Vanessa's shell company for almost nothing, and then they were immediately remortgaged for their full value. The previous owners, they were not in Green Meadows. Harvey had traced them to underfunded, Medicaid-only facilities in 2 different states, isolated from their families, their assets gone, their identities stripped. But that wasn't the report that stopped my heart. Jenkins called me on the cheap, pay-as-you-go phone Harvey had insisted I use. Her voice was flat, all business, which somehow made the news more terrible. "Eleanor," she said. "Miles Carter found something in the deleted files on Daniel's company server. An email thread. It was between Daniel and Vanessa, dated 1 week before the accident." I sat down on the lumpy sofa bed, the phone gripped tight. What was it? It was an unexecuted separation agreement. Daniel was leaving her. He had discovered her property fund. In the draft, he demanded she sell their shared home and repay the significant amount of money she had clearly funneled into her shell companies. He was threatening to go to the authorities. My son wasn't just an obstacle. He was a whistleblower. He was the only thing standing in her way. "There's more," Jenkins said, and I knew it would be worse. "We subpoenaed his life insurance policy, the one Vanessa had him update 6 months ago. It has a double indemnity clause. It pays out double the face value in the event of an accidental death. Vanessa is the sole beneficiary." The room went very quiet. The numbers, the implications, they all clicked into place. The brake sensors, the garage, the fight in the parking lot, the sudden accident. My son had not just died. He had been eliminated. He was murdered for the insurance money that would pay off her debts and provide the capital to expand her grotesque empire. And I was the follow-up plan. The paid-off house, the grieving mother, the emotionally dependent widow. I wasn't just being moved. I was being harvested. A coldness settled over me that had nothing to do with grief. It was a terrible, precise clarity. This was not about my house anymore. This was not about my furniture in trash bags. This was about my son's life. I would not just protect myself. I would destroy the entire network. I would make sure no one else ever felt the humiliation I felt, and I would do it in Daniel's name. At our next meeting, the 3 of us, Jenkins, Harvey, and I gave the plan its official name. It was Harvey who said it, a grim, humorless smile on his face. "Let's call it Operation Trash Bags. She used that insult to break you. We'll use it to bury her." I went home. The dutiful, broken mother. I found Vanessa in the kitchen, tapping figures into her laptop. I let my shoulders slump. I let my hands tremble. "Vanessa," I whispered. She looked up, her impatience barely concealed. "I've been thinking," I said, my voice watery, "about Green Meadows. You're right. This house. It's just memories. Everywhere I look, I see him." I managed a small, pathetic sob. "It's too painful. I can't be here." Her eyes changed. The cold, assessing look was replaced by a sudden, hungry spark. If I sign the papers for you, the house, all of it, can I move to Green Meadows sooner? I just want this to be over." She was on her feet in an instant, her arms around me in a grotesque pantomime of comfort. Her skin felt cold. "Oh, Mom. Of course. That's so brave, so wise." She and Lorraine celebrated that night. I heard the clink of wine glasses. "She's finally seen reason," Vanessa crowed, her voice loud and triumphant. She immediately called their lawyer, a man whose name Harvey was already investigating, to schedule the signing. She was giddy, relieved. What she didn't know was that Jenkins had already paid a visit to this same lawyer, not as my counsel, but as a representative of a fictional watchdog group for elder care. She had laid out a hypothetical case of fraud, identical to mine, and subtly reminded him of the disbarment and prison time that awaited any attorney who negligently facilitated elder abuse. The trap was set. The signing was scheduled for Thursday. I overheard Vanessa on the phone with a partner in Florida. "The Maple Heights asset closes Thursday," she said. "All business. The funds will be liquid by Friday for the new acquisition." She was rushing. She was sloppy. She needed the money from my son's house to close her next deal. She was a predator, moving toward the bait, and she had no idea the trap was about to snap shut. It was the day before the signing. Vanessa, vibrating with an impatient, avaricious energy, decided she needed to apply one final, theatrical turn of the screw. She wanted me not just defeated, she wanted me annihilated, a shell of a person who would sign anything. She called a junk removal truck. She and Lorraine, her mother, physically hauled the last of my furniture out of the den. The sofa bed I was sleeping on, the armchair where I read, my old reading lamp. They tossed them onto the curb with the last of the bags. "Mom is just so excited to move to her new, better place," Vanessa yelled, a performance for the benefit of Mrs. Petroff, who was watching from her window. "We're just clearing out the last of this old, musty clutter for her." I stood on the edge of the lawn, a perfect replica of the woman I was 2 weeks ago. I let the tears come. They were not difficult to summon. I let my shoulders shake. I looked, for all the world, like a broken, elderly victim. But my right hand was clenched in my coat pocket, my thumb triple-tapping the dark screen of my phone. The audio recorder was active. 10 feet away, the smart doorbell camera, its lens aimed perfectly, was recording every second in high-definition video. Vanessa, sweating now, grabbed the last box from the porch. It was a small cardboard container holding the few framed pictures I hadn't been able to hide, including my own wedding photo. She tripped, catching her toe on the threshold, and kicked the box. It skittered across the concrete, the glass on my wedding frame shattering with a sharp tinkle. She looked right at me, her eyes bright with malice. "Your stuff's in trash bags outside. Eleanor." She spat, the words a low, venomous echo. "I told you. It's all just junk." Across the street, a new neighbor I didn't know, a young man in number 42, was filming the entire scene on his phone. He was probably posting it to the neighborhood gossip page, titled "Sad Family Drama." He had no idea he was documenting a felony. "Come on," Vanessa snapped, grabbing my arm, her nails digging in. "We're going to see your new room at Green Meadows. You need to get comfortable." The tour was a descent into a specific kind of American hell. Green Meadows was not a home. It was a human warehouse. The moment the doors opened, the smell hit me a warring, chemical stench of industrial bleach and old urine. A high, thin alarm was beeping persistently from a room down the hall, a sound no one seemed to be answering. Residents, or inmates, were parked in wheelchairs in the hallway, slumped and staring, their eyes vacant, watching a game show blare on a television overhead. Vanessa dragged me to the director's office, a woman with a plastic smile and dead eyes. "This is Eleanor," Vanessa said, her voice a symphony of fake, sugary concern. She's the one I told you about. She's so forgetful. She panics constantly. She's completely incapable of managing her own medications. We're very, very worried about her. The director turned her plastic smile on me. Well, hello. Eleanor? We'll take good care of you. Do you know what day it is? Dear. This was my cue. I looked at her, my eyes wide and confused. Is it March? I asked, my voice trembling. I think I'm supposed to meet Frank, my husband. He's taking me to the doctor. I'm worried about my pills. The blue ones. I gave them a performance worthy of a stage. I confused the year. I asked for my husband, who had been dead for 10, and I intentionally mixed up medications. The director just nodded, her face a mask of practiced pity, confirming in her files that I was, indeed, non compos mentis. That night, Vanessa returned me to the house. My house. My bed was gone. My sofa bed was now on the curb. She had, quite literally, left me with nowhere to sleep. You can use the recliner for tonight, she said, waving a dismissive hand. It's all being finalized tomorrow. I sat in the dark in the living room, the house stripped bare around me. I pulled the one small photo album I had managed to rescue from that first day's trash pile, the one I'd hidden under the bathroom sink. I clutched it to my chest and looked at the picture of Dan, the one of him in his cap and gown, his face beaming with pride. Tomorrow, Danny, I whispered into the silence. Tomorrow, this house stops being their trophy. Tomorrow, it becomes the evidence that ends them. Across town, Vanessa, high on her victory, was at her laptop. She sent an email to her partners in Florida. Final juicy deal closing tomorrow at 10 a.m. Maple Heights asset is secured. Funds will be wired by afternoon. Time to pop the champagne. She was so arrogant. She didn't realize the new accountant address Harvey had instructed her to copy on all communications was a dummy, feeding every word directly to our team. Harvey and Jenkins were not popping champagne. They were at the district attorney's office. The warrants were signed. Search warrants for Vanessa's brokerage. Warrants for the shell companies. And, thanks to my audio recordings of Vanessa's threats and the video of the assault on the lawn, a full wiretap authorization. The police were briefed. They would not be knocking. They would be waiting for my signal, right outside the signing. I went to the one remaining closet. I pushed past the empty hangers. In the very back, in a garment bag, was a simple, elegant black dress. I had bought it, saving it for a day I had hoped for Dan's second wedding, if he ever found someone worthy. It was a dress of celebration. Now, it was armor. I laid it out, smoothing the fabric. Tomorrow, I would not be the weeping victim in a black funeral suit. I would be a survivor, dressed for war. The morning of the signing, I walked into the Hollowbridge Plaza, a sterile glass building that smelled like floor wax and ambition. Vanessa's lawyer had an office on the 10th floor. I wore my black armor dress, my handbag clutched in my hand. The conference room was exactly as I'd pictured. The long, polished table gleamed under fluorescent lights. The stacks of papers, the quitclaim deed for my house, the sweeping financial power of attorney were neatly piled at one end, next to a notary's stamp and card machine. They were all there. Vanessa, in a sharp white suit, looking like the victorious CEO. Lorraine, her mother, looking smug. A young, nervous-looking lawyer who couldn't meet my eyes. And, in the corner, a man with a greying beard and a stethoscope, introduced as Dr. Haynes, the neurologist. He was there to provide the final piece of their legal fiction, a signed letter confirming I was lucid enough to give away my life, while also being confused enough to need to. My lawyer, Ms. Jenkins, was already seated. She looked small and overwhelmed, shuffling her own meagre papers. She was playing the part of the court-appointed, ineffective counsel perfectly. "Eleanor, thank God," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with false relief. "Let's get this over with, so you can stop worrying your pretty little head about all this complicated stuff." Ms. Jenkins made a feeble protest. "Now, Mrs. Brooke, are you absolutely certain you understand what you're signing?" Vanessa cut her off. "She understands perfectly. She's relieved, aren't you, Mum?" I just nodded, my eyes wide and frail. I just want to go to Green Meadows. I'm so tired." The young lawyer pushed the power of attorney document in front of me. "If you'll just sign here, Mrs. Brooke." He handed me a heavy, expensive-looking pen. This was the moment. My hand, which had been perfectly steady all morning, began to perform. It shook. It trembled. I reached for the pen, fumbled it, and it clattered loudly onto the floor, rolling under the table. "Oh, dear," I gasped, a perfect imitation of a flustered old woman. "How clumsy of me." "For God's sake," Vanessa hissed. I bent down, a slow, painful-looking crouch, disappearing from their view. Under the table, my hand dove into my handbag. I triple-tapped the screen of my phone, activating the audio recorder. Then I pressed the emergency alert icon Mason had installed, sending my live location and a go signal to Harvey and the team waiting in the parking lot 5 floors below. I resurfaced, my face a mask of pained effort, clutching the pen. "Now, Mum, sign it," Vanessa urged, her voice losing its sugary coating, turning hard. I squinted at the paper. My eyes. It's all so blurry. That was when she broke. Vanessa, so close to her payday, lost her last shred of patience. "Just sign the damn paper. Eleanor," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "It doesn't matter what it says. You're just a confused old woman. Nobody is ever going to believe you if you change your mind. We're doing you a favor." "Vanessa," her lawyer warned, his eyes wide. "No." She spat, leaning over the table, her face inches from mine. "That asylum is a better place for you than this house, and you're going to sign it, or I'll have you declared incompetent by noon." I picked up the pen. I placed the nib on the signature line. The conference room doors burst open, slamming against the walls with a sound like a gunshot. "Nobody move," a loud, authoritative voice commanded. Vanessa shrieked. The room was suddenly full of people. 2 uniformed police officers, Harvey, and a grim-faced man in a suit who I knew was the district attorney. They fanned out, flanking the table. "What is this?" Vanessa screamed, recovering. "You can't just— I am a respected realtor. This is a private family matter." "This meeting is concluded," the DA said, his voice booming in the small room. He held up a warrant. "We are here on suspicion of conspiracy to commit elder fraud, real estate money laundering, and potential insurance fraud." Vanessa turned on me, her face a mask of pure reptilian hatred. You did this? You're crazy? She's senile? She's been manipulated by her," she shrieked, pointing at Jenkins, Ms. Jenkins, no longer small or ineffective, stood up. She clicked a silver USB drive and plugged it into the room's large television monitor. "Actually," she said, her voice clear and cold, "my client has been manipulated by you, but she's also been recording you." She pressed a button. The kitchen audio filled the room. Lorraine's voice, "He'll find what he's paid to find." Then Vanessa's, "The transfer of the house will be so much easier." Vanessa's face went white. "And then there's this," Jenkins said, clicking again. The screen lit up with the high-definition video from my doorbell camera. The entire room watched, in horrified silence, as Vanessa and Lorraine hauled my life to the curb. They watched Vanessa kick my wedding photo, and then they heard her, loud and clear, her voice full of contempt. "Your stuff's in trash bags outside. Eleanor." Dr. Haynes, the neurologist, made a small gasping sound. He immediately turned to the DA. I want to make a statement. Mrs. Lorraine Brooke. She paid me in cash to write a diagnosis of cognitive decline. I never even ran a full clinical exam on the patient before Vanessa could even process the doctor's betrayal." Harvey stepped forward. He threw a thick file onto the center of the table. "And for when you claimed it was just a family matter, Ms. Brooke," he said, "here is the evidence for the other 3 victims of your senior property fund. Here are the bank records showing the wire transfers from the shell companies to your personal account. The one you used to buy the new Mercedes. The one you used for the Gucci bags." The room was silent. Vanessa stared at the file. The local police officer, who had been quiet until now, looked at his partner. The media, who Harvey had apparently tipped off, were already visible, cameras aimed through the glass walls of the office lobby. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. It was a front-page story. They placed me in a small, windowless room, separate from the others. After about an hour, a police officer brought Vanessa in. Her white suit was rumpled. Her perfect makeup was gone. Her face pale and splotchy. She sat opposite me, the metal table between us. She tried one last time. "Eleanor," she whispered, leaning forward, trying to manufacture a conspiracy between us. "This is a misunderstanding. Lorraine. My mother. She's controlling. She pushed me. It was to protect the family's financial future. Yours included. You can stop this. Tell them you were confused." I looked at her. I didn't feel rage anymore. I just felt cold. "You didn't just try to steal my house. Vanessa," I said, my voice quiet, but it cut through the room. "You stole my son first." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with genuine shock. "The garage," I continued. "The fight in the car. The double indemnity insurance policy he was forced to sign. The brake sensors. You didn't just want my house. You wanted his life." I didn't need a murder conviction to see the truth in her eyes. She knew I knew, and she knew it was over. The court case was swift. The DA didn't just bring my evidence. He brought Harvey's evidence of the other 3 victims. The courtroom was packed. The high point, or perhaps the low point, was when the prosecutor played the doorbell video on a massive screen for the jury. The entire room sat in stunned silence as my life was kicked across the driveway. They heard her voice echo in the quiet room. "Your stuff's in trash bags outside." The prosecutor turned to the jury. "They did not just see Mrs. Brooke as a person," he said. "They saw her as garbage, and that is how they treated her. how they treat all the elderly they exploit. When I took the stand, I was not the trembling woman from the signing. My voice was steady. I told them everything. I told them about the pills I flushed down the drain, about the fear, about the humiliation, and I told them about the moment I decided to stop being a victim and start being a witness. I told them I pretended to be the confused old woman they wanted me to be, all so I could gather the proof to stop them. The verdict was guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit elder fraud, money laundering, insurance fraud. Vanessa and Lorraine were sentenced to significant prison time. The judge froze all their assets, and the V. Brooke Holdings accounts were seized to pay restitution to me and the other victims. Their real estate licenses were revoked for life. And the judge, in his final summation, formally referred the suspicious circumstances of Daniel's death to the state's Major Crimes Division for a full homicide investigation. On the courthouse steps, I was blinded by a wall of cameras and microphones. A young reporter shoved a microphone in my face. "Mrs. Brooke, how do you feel? Are you happy with the verdict?" I paused. "Happy no," I said, my voice carrying in the sudden quiet. "This doesn't bring my son back. Justice isn't about joy. It's about necessity. My son is gone. But because we are standing here today, perhaps another mother, in another town, won't have to hear the words, 'Your life is in a trash bag,' on the day she buries her child." I used the restitution money and the help of Ms. Jenkins and Miles Carter to start a small foundation in my son's name, the Daniel Brooke Memorial Fund. It provides free legal consultations for seniors who are facing pressure over their assets or guardianship. It was a different kind of revenge, a constructive one. I returned to my house. The police had removed the tape. It was empty, sterile. But it was mine. The first thing I did was go to the driveway and retrieve the last of the torn bags. I spent an entire weekend, by myself, sorting. I saved every photograph, every letter, every small, precious piece of my history. The things that were truly broken, the shattered glass, the ruined clothes, I put into new, clean trash bags, and I rolled the bin to the curb myself. This time, it was my choice. On Tuesday, the municipal garbage truck came. I sat on my front porch, drinking a cup of coffee. I watched it lift the bins and take the last of it away. But what it was taking wasn't my life. It was the physical evidence, the copies of the fake documents, the printouts of the shell company's letters, all of which had been scanned and archived by the DA. I watched the truck turn the corner. "Trash belongs on the outside," I whispered to myself. "But people do not." That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Miles Carter. "Eleanor," he said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "The DA's office just unsealed the new file. It's officially a homicide investigation. They've found a witness at the garage." I hung up, and for the first time, I cried. Not for the loss, but for the completion. I walked to the mantel, where Dan's picture now sat, the one from his graduation. I touched the glass. "You rest now, honey," I whispered. They threw me out with the trash, but from the curb, I found a way to drag all of their filth into the light. I closed the front door, the solid click echoing in the house. I stood tall, my shadow stretching long and straight across the entryway. I was 63. I was a widow, but I was not disposable. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm really curious to know where in the world you're tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and let's all share our thoughts. And if you felt this story, please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary. Give this video a like and hit that hype button to help it get heard by more people.